I'd like to introduce you to James Stewart. He's a producer for Geneva Film Company. Geneva Film Company is, of course, a top advertising filmmaker, commercial maker. He's worked with the likes of Samsung. He's worked in stereoscopic 3D. He's effectively my go-to guy when it comes to immersive cinema. So first, let's give James a round of applause. And James, I'll let you introduce your panelists.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so today we're going to talk about 360 capture, as well as stereoscopic 360 capture. But also we have a panel of storytellers here, so we'll talk a little bit about how they do what they're doing and why they do it and what some of the pitfalls are. So I'll just go from my side over. First is Dylan Pearce, who a lot of you know was here last year. He's a top 3D director. He did a film called 40 Below and Falling. It was in stereoscopic 3D that won an award in Europe at the 3D Festival, I believe. Won one of the top Lumiere Award at the 3D Festival in Belgium, which if any of you have a chance to go to that, I highly recommend it. It's fantastic. And he also recently did a couple of projects in VR using the Ozo rig as well as some of his other rigs that he'll tell us about. Beside him is Tim Dashwood, who many of you know. He has been in 3D as long as anybody. Very well known for the Dashwood stereoscopic plugin, which was the industry standard, and now he has the Dashwood VR plugin, which is also the standard for organizing and fixing and perfecting your 360. And he is also working with John, which is one of the industry leaders. He recently worked on the post-production on the Paul McCartney 360 concert videos, which is also very successful. He'll tell us a little bit more about that. And beside him is Ryan Jackson, who's also from Edmonton. Dylan's from Edmonton. Edmonton has become the center of VR in Canada.
Sure.
You have a chance.
Yes, it has.
You need to get out there. The rigs don't freeze up, that's for sure. Ryan has a company called Full Circle Visuals. They have a 360 Sony rig, and they have been working on an Aboriginal storytelling project across Canada. They have a booth downstairs where you can actually see his 360 rig. And beside him is Ian Sung from Anansi Moving Images, based in Toronto, and he did a VR project called The Ancestor's Journey, which he'll tell us a little bit about. So, welcome everyone, and let's just go down the row. I guess we'll start with you, Dylan. Tell us a little bit about the VR project. And again, a lot of the projects we do are under NDA, so you can't really talk about who the client is or where it's going. But if you can talk in general terms, at least, and tell us about the cameras you're using and how you're doing them and what you've discovered in the last year, let's say.
Sure. Hello, everyone. We did recently 2 VR projects for TELUS. We're not out yet. They'll be, I'm not sure when they'll be soon, we just finished those that we shot on the Nokia Ozo. For those of you, does everyone know what that camera is? Most people? Yeah. So it's a camera that allows you to shoot in stereo for the front hemisphere. We'll go with 190 or 200, just for safe. So we did that, and we're also working right now on a short film haunted house experience for 2 people in the HTC Vive that can go through together and experience, say, a haunted house together. So those are kind of the 2 VR projects that we're working on right now. We have a few custom built rigs, kind of depending on the situation and what the project requires. It doesn't always require 3D. As sad as that is to say, right now a lot of the content is being kind of viewed online on YouTube or Facebook. That's kind of where a lot of my projects get seen the most. As headsets get more prevalent, people that'll kind of 3D becomes a bigger factor. But it's all project dependent whether you shoot in stereo or not.
Okay, that's great. And tell us a little bit about your experience with the Ozo. The TELUS work is presumably for VR headsets. It's an effective tool for doing that, even though it's 2D. the back?
Yeah, I mean, how we kind of, how I guess I've approached VR is the same way, coming from my film background. We essentially, we try to light the front, so we cheated, where we're basically filming the front, we light it, and then we keep the camera locked. It's only worse if it's locked, and then we can light the back half, and we have control over that. So I kind of look at it as, when I'm approaching filming this, I just view 180 and view 180. And I don't have to deal with hiding lights. It doesn't always work. Sometimes you have shots where you're moving the camera, there's tracking and pausing, and that gets a lot more complicated. So when it's stationary, you can kind of, I guess, cheat a little bit and shoot it twice. But again, I mean, I'm sure you guys have heard this before. Your audience, you kind of have like a set parameter, depending on if it's the first time they're viewing 360. They'll look around for like 15 seconds, unsure what to do. If they've been seen 360 videos, they'll sit and wait for cues to tell them where to look. So how you kind of shape your video will all depend upon who your audience is. There's a really great video I like by Justin Lin called Help. And it's just the story guides the viewer where to look, and there's different options, but you get the same story. So we've kind of taken that approach by guiding the viewer through visuals. Soon it'll be audio once the headphones kind of get there. We have a pair on order that allow you to track your head. That might already go right now, other options, but yeah.
So from a directing point of view, I know a lot of people are afraid to move their 3D rigs around. And so are you put the ozone on a dolly, and how did you deal with that, knowing that you're looking 180 before you turn around?
So we did put some movement. There's two VR experiences that do tell us. One was it can't be seen. This one was stationary. This one puts you in a campground. I thought it was a great spot for a story. You're by a campfire. You're experiencing a horror story. It was based on Tellus's parameters of life in Alberta. So we kind of did a horror story of a grandfather who is from Calgary and the grandma's from Edmonton, and they're both trying to spook their grandkid who'd never been to Alberta before, how evil Calgary is or how evil Edmonton is. So we kind of played off this little theme. So there was no movement in that, but the other one was set on the Saskatchewan River, so the camera was in a canoe, and we couldn't control lighting then, but the movement in there, we stabilized it, and I mean, I think for first-time VR people, if you're kind of new, it might be a bit strange, but for the most part, because the horizon, we're able to stabilize it, it's pretty good.
So you put that ozone in a canoe?
I won't confirm I did that, but
Is it afloat?
it's yes.
Excellent. So you said you're stabilized it. So is it shooting? Did overshooting allow you like 10% to stabilize?
We have like a guy in Edmonton who just built something to stabilize.
Oh, okay. So you physically stabilize the camera. Okay, great. So Tim, tell us about some of the things you've done in live action in the last year, been involved in, and what have you learned in the last year?
Well, 80% of what I do is more on the post-production consultancy side. So a lot of times when I'm called in to work on these projects, it's because they run into some sort of issue that was unexpected. And they call me to try and figure it out. Stabilization, for example, I was just called the other day about stabilizing some footage in a canoe that was shot from stereo.
Was shot in Edmonton?
No, it was on the Amazon. So I stabilized it for them, but you know, the issue there, when you're working with stereos, you need to keep a level horizon, or you're going to get vertical disparity between the eyes. So now, over the next few weeks, I'm going to be trying to figure out how to solve that problem. So those are the sorts of things that I end up doing. As far as production, we service corporate clients. We do a lot of ends up being experimentation for directors and producers who want to explore the medium, and they want to explore it first before they go and get their funding, which always seems to be the case, unfortunately. So we've done a lot of small projects in that respect. And you know, you mentioned the Paul McCartney project. That once again was one of those things where you know they went and they shot the whole thing, and it was a situation where they only had 2.5 hours to shoot Paul McCartney, but they had to produce 5 videos. And so the question was, well, how do you make that interesting? So they wanted to, you know, put a bunch of music videos and stuff all around in the sphere in 3D. And I had already developed a plugin to do that for another project. We were compositing green screen. So this was a repurposing of that. And so they contacted me, they wanted to get the beta. I started just basically directly working with the editor on it at that point. And you know, that leads to a lot of creative ideas, things that I never thought that I could do. 360, it hadn't occurred to me until a problem arises that, you know, you have to do something creative. And so that's what a lot of my work ends up being.
So the jump rig is designed to do live action capture, right?
Yeah.
So they're not calling you to say, help us with the live action capture, because
No.
that's working perfectly?
It doesn't work perfectly, but it works. It probably works better than most of the other rigs out there. There's one important reason for that. They're using computational stitching. So Google has basically developed their cloud stitching platform, and John has something very similar. And they have some very smart engineers there who are developing this. The way it basically works is that John camera shoots from 24 different cameras, so 16 in a circle and 4 on the top and 4 on the bottom. And you upload all of this information to the cloud, and then, you know, overnight the cloud computers figure out where each pixel is in three-dimensional depth, and then it spits out a left eye, right eye render. So that's really handy because basically you don't end up with stitch lines. But it's so, because it's computational, it's looking for you know, parallax. It's looking for where this pixel is from this camera, where that same pixel is from this camera. What that means is that you have to have good exposure throughout the scene. So it doesn't really lend itself well to shooting, you know, say, cinematic dark scenes. And one thing I mentioned yesterday when I did my talk, I was talking about Paul McCartney painting. They did actually trick the computational stitching, because Tony Kaye was told, don't do any flashing lights, and he did it anyway. And then the computational stitch couldn't do stereo for it, because the lights were flashing, the strobes and everything. Couldn't figure that out. And so that one video of the 5 is mono. So it ended up being stitched manually.
So tell me a little bit, so the Google Cloud rendering, is that something that's out and available now to
Yeah, but only if you're using the Odyssey system, the jump system.
Okay.
So it's part of their ecosystem, and the way Google is doing it now, I think basically it's like a creator thing. And I have worked on one of those projects. We did a music video for Posies, which was done out in Seattle, and I did post on it. But you know, the thing is that camera is 16 GoPros in a ring, and they're not shooting the zenith or the nadir at all. So what their stitch ends up doing is just giving you this kind of like blurry, you know, zenith and blurry nadir. And I don't know, they say it's computational, but the footage that I got still had stitch lines. And so I don't know.
So does anybody else have a cloud solution for rendering?
As far as I know, those are the only two that are actively used.
All right, so sorry to say that you're back to doing it yourself. You mentioned earlier an issue with keeping the horizon line, something as simple as keeping the horizon line consistent and at the horizon. So what would you suggest to people of the audience who maybe have GoPro rigs and, you know, they're on their shoot running through the market in Asia, or their cooking show or whatever, what would you suggest that they do or don't do?
If you're shooting mono, then it doesn't really matter except for roll and shutter artifacts. Big problem. Because if the geometry of each camera changes when we're trying to stitch it, that becomes a problem. Because on a frame-to-frame basis, geometries shift. So try to keep it steady in that respect. Try to have no vibration at all. But yeah, if you're shooting mono, stabilization isn't a problem. Because in post-production, we can just move the whole sphere around. In stereoscopic 3D is a problem because you need the taking lenses to be horizontally level to the horizon. Because if you then go and stabilize a camera that was doing this, you're going to get parallax points that are causing vertical disparity between the eyes, where your left eye might be looking up, your right eye is looking down. You're going to feel the pain.
Now that music video, the posings, is that available somewhere?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I don't know. I finished that one in the summer. I haven't thought about it since.
Is it presumably on no VR or something like that?
I assume it's on YouTube because it was a Google thing.
So it was 2D, so it would be on the YouTube.
Yeah, but it was 3D.
Oh,
It was shot with the Odyssey rig. So we composited. It was actually some footage of Toronto from there, because the director was downloading a bunch of stock footage that she wanted to put in, have composited with different transparencies and stuff. And she actually had stock footage in there of the Dundas Square time lapse. I don't know if someone shot that. That's a video.
Yeah, my footage. Residuals. Okay, so
When you say computational, like the computational stitching, as opposed to what's the non-computational?
The artistry of a person sitting there, actually figuring it out.
Oh,
Stitch
like
line. Yeah, so, well, if you're using like ADP or PT GUI or something, that would be non-computational. And the best you're getting is, you can change the geometry of each camera, but you're still just fitting those, say, 6 cameras together. Whereas computational looks at the point of view of all pixels and tries to calculate a new pixel position for the left eye and per pixel basis.
okay, so good segue to Ryan. So tell us a little bit about the rig you've been using and the projects you've been shooting with that rig or other rigs.
So we're going for really high resolution. We're going for. I'm really interested in the dome. I want a holodeck in my life, and it's going to happen. So I'm really interested in planetariums and dome projection. And but if you're projecting it that big, you really need, it's all about resolution. You need 8K, 16K resolution. And especially a lot of these planetariums, the majority of content that planetariums show is like CGI, like rendered stuff, and they're used to it being perfect. So then when you take a GoPro footage and you blow it up inside of a giant planetarium, it's like, the stitching errors are 10 feet tall. And so I've really been focused on how to get, 8K to 16K resolution. So we built a rig, we're using 6 Sony A6300 mirrorless cameras with 6 fisheye lenses. And when you stitch it together, you get 8K, and it's gorgeous compared to GoPro. So that's what we're shooting with right now. And the production we're working on is, the super short pitch of it is essentially we're going across Canada. The producer we're working with he's built relationships over the last 10 years with a bunch of First Nations elders across Canada, and he's gained access to a bunch of sacred Aboriginal locations that we're going to be going to and filming. But the thing is, it's not just what you see. The question is, why have people for thousands of years come to these places? And it turns out the theory is, it's not just what you see, it's what you hear. These places have special acoustic properties. We filmed down in southern Alberta, this one place called Writing on Stone. And it's all hoodoos, like these weird rock formations from the wind blowing. And when the wind, I've never been in such a weird place in my life. When the wind blows, the rocks sing. And they have certain frequencies that they resonate. And you know how there's musical therapy now? Well, for thousands of years, basically a medicine man would tell someone, go to this place, it will heal you. Because these places have healing properties to them. And so our quest is to go to these places, capture them in 360 for the planetarium, but then be able to recreate the audio frequencies in the planetarium so that your body feels like you're there. And I have a 40-second this is just a little sizzle reel of what we shot, what was that, back in May? June, and it's all about the sound.
excellent.
Yeah, is there lights?
Let's have a look at that now. So we've got lights. Beautiful.
Well, the stories are that our people used to come and get visions. they did use for being able to forecast certain things.
And so what we're hoping is that people can go and see this film and have their own special experience as if they're there. So briefly, things we've learned is that from my experience, so I've been doing 360 video for over 5 years now, and I've learned that once you get to, the jump from 4K to 8K, a lot of, at least my workflows and a lot of the ways I would do things broke apart. And really the secret is do it the old-fashioned way, like actually stitching frame by frame, instead of using GPU stitching, was what you had to do to get this level of quality. But then it's just about horsepower and waiting a lot, right? Or having 10 computers to do it. So sometimes the old-fashioned way is better.
So you're using, how many cameras in your rig?
So in the rig we have six mirrorless cameras in a circle with 8mm fisheyes. And if you tilt the cameras up about 12 degrees, say roughly
10 to 12 degrees.
Yeah, if you tilt them up about, say, 10 degrees or so, basically there's enough overlap at the top where you fill in the top. And then on the bottom, there's maybe a hole. Well, actually the hole is conveniently just exactly the size of the tripod. So it's really, so you can get away with just 6 cameras quite well. It doesn't work in every situation, and of course the rig is about this big, so you can't put it in like a car. But for big landscapes and stuff like that, or even a room this size, it works great.
So each camera is shooting what resolution?
4K.
So can you stitch and output something that's 6 times 4K?
Because there's overlap between them, you get about 8,600 pixels around it. And then I kind of just downsized it to about 8192 by 4096.
So your final output is 8K?
Yeah.
That's what you projected?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what is that projected from?
Depends on the project. So like, how do you project it?
Well, it's a server that's
plays
8K?
So in general, for planetariums, like the one here, in general, you shoot it, you stitch it into one, you do all this work to stitch into this one seamless image. And then you deliver it to planetarium, and then they take that seamless image and they actually slice it apart.
Yeah.
So in a planetarium, say there might be 6 or 12 projectors in a circle to project inside the dome. So you spend weeks and weeks stitching all the footage, and then you hand it to someone, and then they've got to spend weeks and weeks to slice it apart and rewarp it to go to each projector. And so, yeah, so the other thing is that because you're constantly shooting and then you're stitching and you're doing, color correction and effects and then you're slicing it apart, it's really important to have an uncompressed workflow all the way through. You want to keep your quality as high as possible because there's so many generations in the process that it just falls apart over time if you're not uncompressed. But of course, if you're uncompressed, your file sizes are huge. So 8K, I think 20 minutes of 8K is like almost 3 terabytes. And of course, you want that to go on solid-state hard drives because spinning hard drives, it just takes forever. So it's a huge investment, but the result is gorgeous. Yeah. And eventually, who was up here on stage earlier said they're experimenting with a 5K heads-up display. Surely Samsung Gear VR right now is only 1080p, well, 2.8K screen, but eventually we'll be talking 5, and eventually be 10, and eventually be 100, and eventually we'll just plug our brains right into it, right? So I want to be ready for that resolution.
Okay, that's great. So Ian, tell us a little bit about Ancestor's journey and how you produced it, and tell us about the project.
Absolutely. So I started this project, the Ancestor's Journey, out of a trip I took to Ghana, West Africa, about 3 years ago. And we went with a group of 22 young people. And I was creating a documentary called Going Home. It was captured a lot of amazing footage. But when I came back and started trying to gather the resources to make the feature-length documentary, I ran into some roadblocks getting funding. So I've been, people have been coming to me asking me, oh, when is this thing coming out? So I said, you know what, I'm going to bootstrap this myself and start putting this film together. It happened at the same time when I was commissioned to create an immersive, interactive video experience for a youth conference that was happening in July this year. So what I decided to do was combine the two projects. I created an interactive video piece called The Ancestor's Journey, in which you are exploring the migration of African peoples throughout the continent of Africa, and the trafficking of African peoples across the Middle Passage into the New World, and the experiences connecting up with current-day civil rights struggles like the Black Lives Matter movement, and then projecting into a hopeful future. So what I wanted to do with both the interactive video piece, both of which are on display downstairs in the startup area, was to create a platform where I could incorporate the work that was being done by other content producers into something that was seamless and that told a larger story. So the interactive video piece uses content from people created by people all over the world, and it uses a lot of data and visualizes it into Google Maps and the pins that you can dive deep into. So I wanted to replicate that sort of data-centric experience in the world of VR. So when I started creating the virtual reality piece, The Ancestor's Journey, what I had was a lot of material that I shot in Africa using my Red Epic, and some stills, and then a lot of found footage that was, found footage, some of which I had shot, and stuff that other people had created. So I wanted to create this 360-degree tapestry in which I could tell a series of connected stories that would emerge out of all of this content. So what I was faced with was, okay, how am I going to create a 360-degree video when I didn't shoot anything in 360 degrees? So I started by creating a series of tableaus using footage that I had shot in the village and at various locations. So one of the key locations was the slave dungeon, otherwise known as the slave castle, in Cape Coast, Ghana. And I had just gone down there with this woman who was doing her own personal ritual. She went down to the beach to scoop up some water in one jar and some sand in another jar with this really imposing structure behind her. And, I had the camera down on the sandbag on the ground. And that was really cool. I thought this would have been a really big centerpiece of my film. I ended up using frames from the camera while it was rolling, and as I was positioning, I actually captured, most of the area around it. And I took stills from that and stitched stills together in Photoshop and created this 360-degree panorama. And on top of that, now I've layered bits of footage. So when we went inside with the tour guide and they were giving us a tour of these dungeons, I layered that over top of the castle. I filmed an artist here, right by Lake Ontario, on the beach. I composited that in, so I have him on the beach in Ghana singing sort of like a theme piece, and he's telling the story of this journey. And I've shot a little piece on green screen. So I really used all of the stuff from the filmmaker's grab bag to try and create these series of vignettes. And I'm using footage that was shot 2D. I've used stuff that was shot with my 6-camera rig using Shomi E's because they're cheaper than getting GoPros. I've used stuff from this camera, the Samsung 360. So I'm doing, it's a self-funded project. I don't have the resources, so I'm just trying to use whatever tools I can get my hands on to create this.
That's great.
And there's really no rules. Like that's you're a great example of the fact that you don't need a GoPro rig, or a John camera. Like you can do it with one camera. You know, you can. It's really the limitation is your own creativity.
So from a director or a cinematographer point of view, what are some of the things you guys have learned? Things that work really well, or things that work particularly not well? Just open it up, anybody can jump in.
Dylan was mentioning his thing with lighting, and lighting half of the sphere and turning around. And that's the thing. I mean, I think this panel is called Cinematic 360, and biggest trouble with 360 is all the tricks that we used to use doing cinematic material can't necessarily use because we would see the lights. So we have to figure out ways to get around that, and that's always a huge challenge. And especially if you want to move the camera, and there are no rules really. I mean, we've heard a lot of people say there are rules. There's only one rule that we really know of.
Don't make them barf.
Yeah, don't make them barf. Don't accelerate, don't decelerate. If you can move the camera.
Not everyone's following that rule.
Yeah, no, obviously. So yeah, for me, I mean, lighting is huge, and also just trying to figure out how to do the things that we would normally do from the perspective of driving the audience's focus towards, say, a close-up. And so I'm really interested in close-ups, but then what happens, you have to block the actors in such a way that you're avoiding stitch lines, and you're avoiding sort of the bad areas of the sphere that you know you have. Here's an example. Here, Ian set up his camera, right? And we know that the stitch line is probably going to be hitting the corner of those chairs over there. So, he had to put thought into how he was placing the rig when he set it there on the tripod. And those are the things you have to think about. Imagine having 6 cameras and having to think about where all of those stitch lines are going to be. So, blocking becomes extremely important.
Yeah, and Dylan, what did you learn about blocking? Because I would guess most actors don't want their close-up on a fisheye.
Yeah.
Especially if it's not a comedy.
Yeah, working with actors, it's interesting. I mean, I've had to go back to a lot of my theater directing when I first started getting into directing, is rethinking how to stage a scene. There's the whole conversation about cutting, and again, I'm just going to reiterate, there are no rules, get people sick. So it really depends on your story and what you want your audience to experience. That's the biggest thing. The biggest thing I've learned: shorter is better right now. Tell the story as best as you can, short as you can with the story kind of needs to be told. But yeah, when you're working with actors, right? We did a 3D feature, and we had we'll just say we had an actor who we were doing some interactive 360 stuff for the film, and it became an issue of how when they're there and you want to have a close-up, it just doesn't work the same way in 360. So that's a whole other kind of issue. But knowing your camera is a big thing too. The stitch lines, and every camera is going to be different, but just understanding how that kind of all works for you.
Okay, and I'll open this up to anyone. What are some of the best examples of either immersive 360 2D or 3D live action that you guys have seen that you did do yourself?
Good question.
I only watch my own stuff, so
I really like Help. That's one of my favorites. Justin Lin, he's the guy who directed Fast and Furious. It's a little monster discovery story. It's a great little film. I think it was done through Google's Spotlight series. You can watch it in 360 online, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, how you're directed as a viewer. Even if you watch it just in 360, you'll see how it's guided. It's actually, at festivals, it's usually one of the best received pieces, even if it's not watched in VR. You understand what they're trying to do with it.
I'm a former journalist, so anything that's journalism, storytelling, anything that's really taking the viewer and putting them in the issue, like here, you are now in Syria. Like, we're not lying when we say, look, like this everything's blown up. Or I remember it was the New York Times thing about Syria, and there was this part where you're standing there in a field, and all of a sudden an airplane flies over you, and they're parachute dropping supplies. And all of a sudden these people are running out to get the supplies, and it's such an amazing, it was amazing. And the thing is that we're able, as a photographer, and the thing about photography is that photography is all about what you don't show, right? You zoom in on something, and you show this, but you're hiding everything else. And often that's what makes a good photo, is by hiding distracting elements. But with 360, you're seeing everything. And for some purposes in journalism, that's a good thing because it's about accountability. You're seeing everything, so you're not hiding anything. Now that can be annoying because sometimes you want to hide stuff. But for a lot of it, it's the viewer's in control, and the viewer can see that, wow, if I look in every direction, this place is destroyed.
I was going to mention the exact same thing because I kind of have two lists of my favorites. One is a technical, like technically that looks amazing, but how compelling the content is what really matters to me. And I was actually going to bring up the Syrian refugee content that Al Jazeera was doing about a year and a half ago. They were one of my early clients, and they had this one interview, which was just amazing. It was inside of a tent in the refugee camp, and they were interviewing one guy who was over there. And the camera was in the center of the tent, but then you can look around and see all of the other people and kids and everyone sitting there. And it's, it's just like, wow, now I'm here. VR is a 360, it's an empathy machine, and I'm, suddenly just completely empathizing with these people, right? Which I don't think would necessarily work as well on a standard 2D broadcast. And so for me, that sort of thing is really, really compelling. And one of my other favorite things, I keep telling people about this one, is Immersive Media. A few months ago, they went to Africa, and they just set up a rig in the middle of plains and just left. They just drove away and just let it record for hours, right? And when they came back, they just, reviewed the footage to see what they got. And they got this amazing shot where this herd of elephants walked up to the rig, the GoPro rig, and they were looking at it, and sort of the alpha elephant, he kind of went right up to it, and then he made this grunt, and he spit, and the rest of them just stopped. And then he was the only one moving, and he just was looking like this, and then he just goes, and they walk away. You would never see that at a zoo. That, to me, that's compelling content. That was there's no story, but it's real. It's life. It's an experience that no human could ever get if you would disturb the experiment, right? So, for me, that type of content I love.
What I really love about the medium is the fact that we talk about the sense of presence, but there's also a sense of isolation when someone puts on, the HMD and, all of the distractions removed. As the kids were coming through and looking at the ancestor's journey, and it's in some ways a very crude piece, but as it stands right now. And it's a piece that deals with some very, it's not entertainment. It's dealing with emotionally very powerful stuff, but kids would tend to tune out, would tend to withdraw from that if they were just looking at it on the screen. But I noticed how long they remained in the experience, and I think it's partly because of this isolation, and they're having to engage with something without distracting elements around. So I find that things that you wouldn't give a second, you wouldn't give 30 seconds to if you were watching it on a flat plane, you will remain engaged with for longer because of that isolation and that engagement.
On that point, so when you're watching a YouTube video, there's been studies done where they track people's eyes, and when people are watching videos like on YouTube, you know where their eyes are looking the most? At the playhead. How many seconds are left in this? And when you're watching a video on YouTube, people, you're not actually glued to the screen, you're looking all around, you're looking at the other links to click on, and you're distracted by a lot of things, or even if you full screen the video, there's still everything around your screen that's distracting you, but you put on this headset, or you go inside like a holodeck, and you're immersed. You're seeing, you are in the story, and there's no distractions, there's no clickbait yet. Enjoy it while you can.
No, but that's a great point. As everyone talks about it in 360, it's like, oh, you can't control where your audience is going to look. Well, when they're watching a screen, you can't control anywhere. Most people are on second-hand devices, they're doing something else, or half paying attention.
Yeah.
So in actuality, you actually have more attention. It's just as long as you keep your story compelling, you know, they'll look where they need to, or they'll stay involved in it. So.
Do you find that, I don't know, I'm wondering about you guys, I find that some content, just depending on where the camera is placed and the type of content, there's this weird feeling that you get. It's kind of like you're being a voyeur and you shouldn't be there, and you wouldn't get that in 2D. And it's kind of like, I shouldn't be looking at this, I shouldn't necessarily be here. I find that weird. I don't know if you guys have experience.
Yeah. There's a great article, Google, what is it? It's audience design? Google like 360 video audience design. Some university did a great study where they studied how viewers take in 360. And it was these weird effects where, like, one of the biggest problems with 360 was FOMO, like fear of missing out, because people are always worried that they're missing what's supposed to happen. I remember I watched North Face did a 360 film, and it was like a mountain climbing to the top of a mountain. And the first time I watched it, I hear, ah! And I look behind me, and there's a guy dangling by a rope. I'm like, oh, that's weird. The second time I watched it, I was looking that way, and I realized that there was a guy climbing a rock, and he slipped and fell, but his safety cable, caught him. And I thought to myself, I totally missed that, because I was looking over here. But not only that, if this had been normal film, or normal cinema, they'd show him, and like, oh no, and then there'd be a close-up of his fingers, sliding, and then they'd have a close-up of his friend going, oh no, and then he'd start falling, and he'd fall in like slow motion, And it would be, with normal cinema, you can stretch and draw out the moment for emotion. But with 360, it's just, oh, you're fine. So it's very different, and you just have to use other techniques.
Spatial audio.
Yes. Our spatial audio, that's all. It's got to innovate a lot faster.
Yeah.
What's interesting, audio is a good way to direct people's vision, surprisingly, because you're looking around, and suddenly there's audio behind you here that causes the viewer to look behind them or look around. You are able to direct their eyes by using their ears.
That's right. With the piece that we're with the Ancestor's Journey, I've got these series of vignettes, as I mentioned, and there are these windows where things are taking place. And in order to draw the person's attention from one window to the next, in the first scene I use sprites moving across the screen, along with it's only in stereo, so I'm using audio cues from left to right, right to left, to get them to turn their heads. And then by the next scene I dispense with the sprites because they got that. Hopefully they got the idea by then. And I found people were picking up on it. So yeah, the audio cues are the main tool that I use, along with of course light. I'm controlling the brightness of one image and sort of bringing it up in the other, because oftentimes the windows that I'm using are not hard windows, it's sort of diffused, so you've got images overlapping, and as the brightness of one image goes down, the other one comes up, so it sort of helps them to see that something else is going on over here.
You have to guide the eye.
That's right. So open up to questions. Are there any questions here? Oh, there's lots of questions. We'll start on this side. Go ahead.
So the panel is for 360, but in your opinion, on the lowest field of view, like 240 or 220, or also another question, what's about 360 full sphere compared to 180 stereo? What is your idea about it?
And I guess it depends if, but when you consume the 360, are you sitting down or are you standing up? It's a good question because, the adult industry kind of embraced just a stereo hemisphere. And, it's not great content or anything, but, that's, for whatever reason, they decided that was what they were going to do. And they've chosen that. We've heard arguments even from some people at Facebook saying that that's good enough, and it's actually really easy to shoot. You just need 2 cameras with fisheyes, and you can actually shoot stereo and get hemisphere stereo. So,
But the field of view is only 180.
it's only 180, but then again, you can get creative, kind of like what Ian was talking about, where you can start filling the back half with other content. Or you could have like 2 separate hemispheres of 2 completely separate scenes. Or just like it's unlimited possibilities what you could do. I mean, I think that's totally viable. I don't know. What do you think?
No, I think it really depends on the experience. What I found, if it's possible, I like to have something back there. Because always, even if the story's up front here, 180, someone will always just want to look back just to check. That's what I always found. And then if there's nothing back there, it pulls them out. Even if I have nothing back there, I try to have a background there. But we're experimenting. We're doing a short film where it's a couple trying to cancel their cell phone bill or their internet bill, and you have the couple here, and then behind them is the internet provider on the other side. So it's like a story being told on both sides. So
That's a creative use of that.
yeah, it's just trying to find creative ways of like making this cinematic as possible.
It reduces the FOMO that Brian was talking about.
It also comes back down to like what's the purpose, because there's passive versus active viewership. Sitting on the couch watching TV or sitting in a movie theater is passive. You're just looking forward and it's happening to you. Versus 360, where it's interactive, is active, where the person can be turning around. So if your story doesn't need to be active, then hemisphere might be good enough. I guess it depends on what the story is.
Okay, so the next question here.
This is kind of a pedestrian question, but when you're dealing with the huge amounts of data, I think you said 3 terabytes for a 20-minute movie at 8K. I mean, how are you distributing stuff? How are you doing long-term archival storage, safe storage of the things you're creating?
There's a great thing called Google Cloud Drive Unlimited Storage Space, which I am making use of. I'm hoping that Moore's Law holds for a very long time, would be my short answer. Because hard drives keep getting bigger and cheaper. The data that we're shooting is ramping up. But we just got fiber. TELUS in Edmonton. TELUS now has fiber in Edmonton, and neighborhood by neighborhood, they're installing it. And we can upload to Google Drive at 22 megabytes a second. That is a little less than 2 terabytes a day we can upload to the cloud. That completely changes the game. Like, I don't expect to ever buy a spinning hard drive again. Like, the money I was going to spend on hard drives, I'm now spending on solid-state drives. And basically, whatever I'm working on at the moment is on solid states. And my archive is, I have 1 spinning drive on the shelf as like my archive, and the backup is in the cloud.
We still use LTOs.
Yeah, or LTOs.
Yeah. And what's your favorite?
Your plan assumes Google won't.
What's your
yes,
favorite?
You all lose your data.
Yes.
What's your favorite solid-state drive?
Whatever's the cheapest. Samsung's.
Next question over here somewhere. There we go.
So you mentioned that a lot of people said that they experienced a sense of like voyeurism whenever they were in VR. How much do you think is true that? How much, I guess, do you think that's novelty as opposed to openness when people watch porn film, right? They, like, I guess not necessarily desensitized but used to medium, right? So I guess in terms of picking that apart from your experience working in that medium, how much of that do you think is just novelty? Or like agency, I guess.
Probably quite a bit. I mean, to be honest, every time I demo 360, like, I don't know, 9 times out of 10, it's the first time that person has tried it. So especially something like here downstairs, the public is seeing it. And so a lot of times people are, and if it's not the first time, it's like the second or third time. We're really on the cusp of something new in terms of an experience. So and I think as people see more and more films, they'll get it. And they'll have that FOMO less and less.
But they will become desensitized to.
Yeah, like especially the journalistic type of applications of it, right? Like, at what point does the humans like saturated with that type of stuff, right? So it's interesting, in the future to see where that goes.
Yeah, I think we'll be here for a little bit. Like New York Times, they gave everyone who has a subscription a Google Cardboard, and they have specific curated content now they're creating for their subscribers. And again, it's how often are you going to reach out and put your phone in there for that? But if If you're just putting out really great pieces in smaller quantities, you're starting to build an audience. So I think, yeah, there's a little bit of time, but definitely it will wear off in that sense.
I mean,
Great. That's great. Thanks, guys.
A child born today a kid born today or a few years ago even, will never know a time in their life where this isn't normal, right? For us, we compare 360 to traditional cinema, but the kids of the future, it's going to be normal.
For better or for worse.
That's a great note to wrap it up on. Thank you guys, appreciate it.